doll up in your palatial estate way up there in Bel Air, and every night you take one more pin and you stick it in your Dak Prescott voodoo doll. There can be no other explanation for what we are seeing.
What do we see? We haven't seen anything.
I don't know. That's the problem. Nothing.
We haven't seen anything.
Shannon, you don't strike me as a voodoo doll kind of guy.
No,
yeah, maybe not. Maybe not. Well, we will get to that, I promise you. We're going to get to Joel Embiid's big new contract in a second. But first, since you want to talk about Dak, since you want to talk about the Cowboys, let's start there. Dak Prescott remained limited in practice last night, and just days after a MRI showed positive signs of his muscle strain healing, Mike McCarthy told reporters that the team is, quote, playing it cautiously with their franchise quarterback. McCarthy also said, quote, no urgency from my perspective to see Dak play against Houston. He also said that if Dak does not play this Saturday, the team will hold him out for their final preseason game, which makes sense. So, Shannon, if you got the voodoo doll, what's going on here?
Skip, I told you when this came out, it sounded a little bit more serious than what they were leading on. They didn't want to cause alarm or panic within Cowboy Nation.
And by the way, our man Troy Aikman drove that home.
Right, without on top of that. And what started out as a 2 to 3 day injury, he'll be back 2 to 3 days, turned into 10 days and a second MRI. And normally, Skip, it's kind of like if you're in a building and everybody says, well, leave the building in a timely manner, no need to be alarmed. Everybody's going to take off running because you said I shouldn't be alarmed, therefore I should be alarmed. It was the mere fact that the Cowboys in their little release with Twitter said no reason to be alarmed. Well, you kind of set off the alarm bells by saying that with him getting a second MRI. And for him, like, well, we don't want to, have a setback. I thought you told me everything was fine. Mike McCarthy knows, Skip, in order to get Dak ready to play this game, you're going to have to ramp up his volume of throws. Ramping up his volume of throws does what? Increases the likelihood it's not healed as well as they had hoped. And so now I'm not going to put Dak at further risk. Everybody knew if he didn't play this game, he wasn't playing last game because you're not going to play your starters in the final preseason game and put Dak out there behind backups. So we knew that it was either now or never. Well, listening at the first Hard Knocks and Stephen Jones talk, he didn't want Dak to play at all, regardless of before the injury. So you know he doesn't want him to play now that he has an injury because all Cowboys' hopes and aspirations that you and others would have would go slowly down the drain, like Teddy KGB said, if Dak was somehow not able to play opening night. But, Skip, you're asking an awful lot. A guy that hadn't played in 11 months, and his first game of action is going to be against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who defense was third in QB pressures, fourth in sack. Shaq, JPP, Devin White, Vita Vea, and Ndamukong Suh.
Keep going. You can just keep counting them off.
So you're going to have your work cut out for.
It sounds like Murderer's Row.
It is Murderer's Row. That you would like to know. Not saying any game is easy in the NFL, but you don't want to open up with the defending champs in their building when they're dropping the banner and want to show the world we're trying to run this thing back. So I was always a little concerned, more concerned than what Mike McCarthy was saying, because 2 to 3 day injury, I've had a couple of 2 to 3 day injuries in camp. And it was what they said, 2 to 3 days. And I didn't get a second MRI, but you start going 7, 10 days, a quarterback skip throwing, that's the cause concern. That's his right arm. A right-handed quarterback, he's no use to you if he cannot throw the football. And Dak was unable to throw the football for 7 to 10 days. And so now they're going to try to slowly build him back up for September the 9th. You're concerned as rightfully you should be.
Okay, my turn. I want to stress to Cowboy Nation, I still really like this football team. I like the rookie class. I like the receivers. I like what could be a top 5 offensive line if we can just keep them healthy, which is still a possibility. I think that glass is half full this year.
I'm still waiting on something. The butt.
Okay, I'm getting to the big but. I do not love anything about this situation because they had a big workout last night in the Star, out in front of the masses. They let the fans come in. And Dak was once again limited. He participated in some individual soft-tossing drills, but when it came time to do the team stuff, when it was time to throw against the defense, he was noticeably absent. something is really not right here.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say this one more time just to drive this point home. I've been doing this for a long time. I covered this game even longer than you played this game. I started with Don Shula's Dolphins in Miami, and I covered Chuck Knox's Rams in L.A., and Tom Landry's Cowboys in Dallas,
Chuck.
and Jimmy Johnson's Cowboys in Dallas. I even covered Dave Wannstedt's Chicago Bears, if you can believe that, leading to Steve Mariucci's San Francisco 49ers. I can go on and on. I've been doing this for a long time. I have never, ever heard of a quarterback straining or tearing a muscle in his arm in training camp. I have not heard it. Maybe you do. I've asked you before.
Muscle, though.
Yeah, but it's just some weird, it's underneath the shoulder.
Right.
You know, it's along the side of the back there. It just doesn't happen. It's not an injury that a quarterback suffers. Sometimes baseball pitchers will have that kind of an injury. And again, we've talked about this before. Throwing a baseball is a very unnatural motion. Throwing a football this way is a very natural motion that doesn't usually hurt your arm.
Skip, funny story, but true. In 1997, John Elway tore his bicep in training camp.
Okay? That's a whole different issue, okay?
And he was still able to throw the football. He missed a couple of days of
But
practice.
you know what they do, and I tore mine, so I know all about this. They tear them at the top, okay? And what they do is just go right in, and if it's torn a little bit, they just clip it and let it fall down, because you don't really need it to throw a football. That would be in his
They didn't do anything to his. He just got a little Popeye. I mean, looked like he got muscles now.
Okay, that's exactly right. Okay, so the point is, quarterbacks don't get Tommy John surgery because there's not that much torque on the elbow, okay? So it's a highly unusual, it might be rare, it might be a unique injury that I've never heard of, to the point that everybody gets sort of tired arm. They call it dead arm in camp, just because you're throwing too many footballs too quickly. But you take a day off, maybe you take a couple of days off, and you come back just fine. It's just fatigue. It's not injury. This is clearly an injury. And to your point, he volunteered to the media, I need a second MRI. You do? It's just a strain, right? Well, some people were reporting early on it was a tear. Is it a tear? I don't know. At least he's doing some minor sort of soft tossing. That's a good sign. But it's a bad sign that you can't even participate in a practice in front of your fans at the Star in Frisco, Texas, on a Monday night leading up to your dress rehearsal preseason game at home on Saturday night. It's a bad sign because clearly he is not going to play against Houston on Saturday night. Can we just chalk that one up?
Yeah, he's not playing.
He's not going to play. And then Mike McCarthy, as he said, there's no urgency from my perspective to see Dak play against Houston. And then he concludes that the final game is only about backups competing against each other. It's the third preseason game. So this year was all different because we had 1, 2, and 3, except for the Cowboys who played in the Hall of Fame game, along with Pittsburgh. But the point is that if you just have 1, 2, 3, the way they approached this time was 1 is just for the backups, 2 is dress rehearsal, and 3 is just for the backups. So you saw very few starters playing much, if any, in game number 1, and trust me, in game number 3, you'll see nobody play. So Dak is not going to play in game number 3, which, to your point, means he gets thrown into the hottest fire you could get thrown into on opening Thursday night on a solo stage at Tampa against what was the hottest defense in pro football at the end of the year. A defense that went to Drew Brees and shut him down, and went to Aaron Rodgers and beat him, and beat Patrick Mahomes and beat him up in the Super Bowl. And you listed off the names, you could just keep on keeping on. And that secondary was very young last year.
Davis and Jamel Dean.
It started to come of age. And Antoine Winfield
Jr.,
and Whitehead. They're very good young players who are just growing up right before your very eyes. This is about as tough a test as you could get, let alone Tom Brady against your now very young defense that was historically bad last year. So you need to sort of keep up with Tom Brady. How are you going to do that? How are you going to match fire for fire with Tom Brady? Well, this is the worst, which is why I already chalked up an L in this game.
Skipper, you mentioned about quarterbacks don't have Tommy John surgery because quarterbacks are not throwing the ball as hard as they possibly can, changing their grips. They throw the ball one way. You're not trying to throw a 2-seam, 4-seam, change up.
You're not trying to do any of that. It's just that way. And if you can turn your thumb underneath. It's as pure emotion as you can for your arm. So it's very, how many times during the year, how many times do you hear, Tom Brady can't go today because he hurt his arm? You just don't hear it, right?
No.
They get hit. Jordan Love got hit on his throwing shoulder.
If somebody gets the arm, they're trying to go forward and somebody hit their arm.
And you got a shoulder strain.
But
as far as, does any quarterback ever hurt his arm just by throwing the football? I threw that pass too hard. That 60-yard touchdown throw, it was too much, and my arm, somehow I pulled a muscle. It just doesn't happen.